Hi, everybody. It's Sam Lee. I'm going to go through some of the recent posts that I put up on govconintelligence.com, and I'm going to try something different. I'm going to show you the graphs of data that I've compiled recently, including data showing that the number of small businesses participating in federal contracts is down sharply this year for 2025, and that's a bad sign going forward with some of the policy initiatives that I've been talking about on govconintelligence.com. Let me switch over to the data, but first, here's the outcome of the House Small Business Contracting Subcommittee hearing that took place earlier this week. That's Chairman Nick LaLota. There was a lot of discussion there about the length of the federal acquisition regulation. There he is pointing at the 2,000 pages of the FAR and asking witnesses about what the committee can do to simplify contracting. As some of you already know, the FAR writers are going through the process of redrafting the FAR through the FAR overhaul. And I've been posting about that on govconintelligence.com. Some of that process is just moving stuff that's already in the FAR into different guides, including companion guide, practitioner guides, and those guides have important material in them, particularly for construction contractors. So if you're in construction, I'd highly recommend looking at the FAR Companion Guide, Part 36, and seeing the guidance that it has in there. And I wrote about that in my recent article on govconintelligence.com. Let me go to some of the data that I've been compiling over the past week. Um, First, here's a graph showing how GSA performs with small businesses when GSA awards the contract for another agency. There was an executive order early on in this year that directed agencies to start using GSA as their contracting arm, when the agency in the past might be awarding the contract on its own. So GSA is essentially taking these contracts in and awarding them on behalf of the agency using that other agency's funding. These lighter colored bars that I'm highlighting here, these are the government-wide small business numbers, and then the orange bars here that I'm highlighting are the ones that involve, those are contracts that GSA is awarding on behalf of agencies. And you can see that GSA has reduced numbers as compared to the government-wide averages in working with all the different categories of small business, disadvantaged, women-owned, service-disabled veteran, and hub zone. So we might expect that when some of this contracting moves over to GSA, you could see a decline in the use of small business. Now, I'll note there was a comment on this article saying that right now, GSA assisted contracts tend to be larger contracts, ones that small businesses might not be capable of performing. So that's one of the explanations for why these numbers are lower than they are government wide. And as more smaller contracts move to GSA, you should be able to see those numbers go up. So this does not necessarily mean that in the future, as GSA gets these contracts, that the numbers will stay down. But I do recommend to GSA in the article that they pay attention to these numbers. This is not something that SBA normally puts out, or even necessarily that GSA officials would be paying attention to. So as they take on more contracts and smaller contracts, they should be tracking these numbers to make sure that they're at least keeping up with the government-wide goals, if not the government-wide achievement on all of these categories. In other data, here's something showing the use of the federal supply schedule when GSA takes on another agency's contract. And you can see that there's a bit of a difference when you're talking about contracts overall. This is 7.33 and 10.7. It goes up to 10.7 when GSA is performing the contract. But when you're looking at small businesses, the percentage is almost double. With normal or other agency contracts, it's about 12%. But then when it goes to GSA, 24% of small business contract dollars are awarded through the federal supply schedule. So you might expect GSA is favoring its own vehicle, the GSA schedule. I did have a short discussion in the article about whether this is an issue with GSA getting double paid on these federal supply schedule purchases because GSA gets a fee from the agency for GSA service and assistance, and then they also get a fee from the contractor, the industrial funding fee, the IFF, for the contractor's participation on the GSA schedule. But you can expect as agencies consolidate their contracting with GSA that there'll be increased usage of the federal supply schedule since that is a GSA vehicle. And one more GSA graph. This is, let's see if I can get this a little larger here. This is the rates of usage of set-asides and sole source authorities by GSA when it participates in assisted acquisitions. That's the bottom lines here, bottom bars, and then the higher bars, the top bars are the comparative percentages for when other agencies award their own contracts. So you can see small business set aside is about the same between 40 and 37 with GSA assisted, but there's a big gap on SBIR phase three. GSA has its own program for awarding SBIR contracts, including phase three, and they've been very successful with that. So as more agencies consolidate their contracting with GSA, they might be more likely to use SBIR Phase 3. SBIR Phase 3 is a sole source contracting authority. It was recently added to the FAR Part 6 overhaul. That's the first time that it appears in the FAR. And with more of this contracting going to GSA, SBIR firms are probably going to get more interest in getting Phase 3 awards, which are on a sole source basis. On the socioeconomic programs, you can see that the bottom bars, the GSA bars, are slightly smaller, both on 8A sole source and set aside. Service able vet is much reduced. Part of that is because the other agencies include VA, which has a very high percentage. VA is required to use service able vet small business set asides, and the GSA is looking at agencies other than the VA. So that may work itself out if the VA ends up using GSA for some of its assisted acquisition. Also interesting that GSA is slightly higher on women-owned small business set-asides and much lower on hub-zone set-asides. So it really depends on what your program is, but the overall takeaway is small business set-asides are going to be about the same. SBR Phase 3 is going to go way up. And then within the socioeconomic programs, mostly a slight decrease, maybe about the same or an increase on women-owned. That's it for the GSA data. I also want to highlight data that I published on GovCon Intelligence in a recent article about the number of small business vendors. And this goes back to the first image of Chairman Lalota at the Small Business Subcommittee. A lot of the discussion at that hearing was what can Congress do to stem the decline, to limit the decline in the number of small business vendors. The number of small businesses participating in government contracting has gone down 50% over the past 15 years, and it continues to go down. So the witnesses at and the congressional members were asking about what is it that Congress can do, what can agencies do to stem that decline. Some of the ideas were codify the rule of two, add to the OSDBU and small business specialist staff, as well as increasing size standards or training contracting officers. My answer is you should do all of them because this situation is getting worse. You can see the decline from in recent years, from 2023 to 2024, was very slight. It's like 500, 400 vendors from that year. But then if you go from 2024 to this current year, 2025, you're looking at almost 5,000 small businesses that have left contracting. So we're going to be below 50,000. Right now, we're below 50,000. We'll probably end up around 5,500 when all the data comes through. But right now, it is down 8.5%. That's going to be down about 5,000 firms if it keeps on the pace that it's going for these last 2 weeks. And that's one of the largest decreases in the past 10 years. If this continues at this pace, you'll see the number of firms go down another 50% in less than 10 years. And by 2027, it'll be quite low. It'll be, I think, said it would be below 50,000 at that point by 2027. And that ends up being just 1 in 700 of small businesses that participate in any sort of uh, uh, part of the economy in the United States. 1 in 700 small businesses would be in small business contracting, and that's much lower than we want if we're going to take advantage of the ingenuity, the innovation, and the value that small businesses provide. So the answer to Congress's question from the hearing today is what they should they focus on? Should they focus on the rule of two? Should they focus on size standards? Should they focus on staff? My answer is all of it. Do all of it. Look into all of it because something needs to change for these numbers to start going in the right direction. Oh, once again, please check out my posts on govconintelligence.com. There's a lot more information and data on there, and feel free to reply in the comments if there's anything that you'd like me to look into.